Hi, my name is George. This is Citizens Gone Wild, the podcast. And we have a number of interesting things to talk about. But before we get to those interesting things, I have an interesting idea. I would like to see a viable candidate spring forth to run in the Republican Party because I'm not sure about everything that Biden's doing. I have a lot of unsureness there. But I think the campaign has to be different than it was during the time of Trump and before Trump. For one thing, I think the Republicans should come up with some positive programs. We know they're against Obamacare. We know they're against this and they're against that. And so am I. Fine. But what are they for? People nowadays, many of them, think that the government should play an important role in their lives when they're young, when they're first born, when they're sick, when they need an education, when they're old and need a little help from their friends. It is common thinking and common feeling, and more so amongst young people who just assume that the government can help out and should help out. One area where the Republicans have to come up with something is a positive program regarding health care. Health care is on everyone's mind. Now, the Republicans got away for a long time by saying we're against Trump care. Well, that's terrific, but that doesn't fix a broken tooth, remove a diseased appendix, fix a broken bone, or do much else regarding health care.
Hmm.
What I would suggest is a couple of possibilities here. One is everyone in the United States would be entitled to medical care if all of the governors in the 50 states would put their state on Medicaid. Medicaid is a program partly run by the federal government and partly by the state. If you want everyone in your state to be able to partake of medical care through Medicaid, you have to put them on there. And if you do so, you have to pay 10% of the total cost. Now, all but 14 states have done this. They've almost eliminated this as a cause, as a campaign issue. There are still 14 states run by nincompoops who won't give their people, their own people there in their state, guaranteed medical care by joining Medicaid. So one thing the Republicans can do is say, look, when I get to be president, we'll all be able to partake of medical care through Medicaid. And the way we'll do this is the federal government will pay 100%. Now, unless you want to show that you're a mean-spirited son of a bitch, if you're a governor, you will put your state in Medicaid. There's no reason not to. The federal government will pay for it. The second thing we can do here is we need a number of programs that aren't covered by Medicaid. Dental care, mental health care, things such as that. There are clinics in the United States right now, probably right around where you live, called Federal Quality Healthcare Clinics. Not a very cute name, not good on a t-shirt, but still, the idea is that if you have a certain level of quality in your clinic, you can get paid by the federal government to take care of people. What I would do is come on and say, look, not only are we going to take care of people with their medical needs, but dental care, and I think one that would be especially popular is mental health care. It seems to me that the need is great. When I look at the Asians being beat up by these deranged thugs, I think they're deranged. They don't seem to have a political message. They're not there to rob them. They just seem deranged. And I think we would all be better off, and I think the American people would like it a great deal if we could get these people into treatment. And if they lived in places where you're going down a street and they saw a little sign that said, I don't know, would you like to talk? Come on in. We wouldn't charge them. We would help them if they need medication. We would give it to them free. Maybe it would help. we should sure try something. And dental care, well, there's no point in having bad teeth, and I don't think poor people like bad teeth any more than rich people do. I would take care of that. So I would offer those two programs as the Republican answer, and it's a good answer, I think, to providing medical care for everyone at a reasonable cost. People who have a Cadillac plan, as do the elderly in America, as do most teachers and professors, they would still be able to keep what they have. We wouldn't bother them. But we would also take care of other people who are in need. And I think most Americans would be very happy with that idea. It sure beats yelling at Obamacare.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's another way that the Republican Party can come across as the most moral party. This will seem a little radical to some people. But, you know, when I look at the situation where during World War II, you had, let's say, the Germans and the Jews, and after World War II, we have sworn to take care of protecting the Germans, but not yet the Jews. It seems a little odd to me. And I would like someone to propose that we sign a defense treaty with Israel. I'm not sure Israel would want that because Israel likes to act.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if they would like that at all. Nonetheless, I think the Republicans should push that idea. The Democrats have kind of taken over the moral issue of racism, and the Republicans could kind of take over the issue of anti-Semitism, of which there's a great deal on college campuses. This could be a really great issue. It's hard to come out against it. And I think it would help define the Republicans as a moral people who care about other people. There's another area that, again, is clear, and I think most people would back us. We have a great deal of affirmative action going on in this country, more than some people would like. Now, I know some people are against any affirmative action. They believe everyone should be judged as an individual and not as a member of a group. And I understand that, and I agree with you to a great degree, but not completely. I think you can make a good case, intellectual case and moral case, that we should be helping American blacks. Now, one of the problems that's occurring now is that you can come from another country today and eventually, if you're still black when you arrive, get the benefits of affirmative action. This is true if you want to become a professor, if you want to be a student, there are special scholarships. And NYU and a few other schools actually have scholarships that only apply to people who are here illegally. I don't think most Americans like that. Americans may define it on affirmative action, but I think 90% of Americans think affirmative action should go to black people who were slaves in this country. I think this could be a tremendous political issue. I mean, how else are you going to fight it? And I think the Republican Party should do this. Right now, the son of a white soldier who lost both her legs fighting for this country, and there are a lot of them, unfortunately, that person's son gets nothing from anyone. I think we should take care of the children of people, white people, all people, but other people are already taken care of. But we should have scholarships for anyone, white or black, whose father died fighting for this country positively. I mean, who can be against that? And also if they were severely wounded, because you're not going to earn much of a living if you're sitting in a wheelchair all day. For goodness sakes, we can help these people out. Somewhere in the schmillions that we spend for defense, there should be a couple of $100,000 for these people. God help us if we don't do that. It would be an important cause. It would be a loud, clear cause, and I think the Republicans should adopt those ideas. I think they'd all be popular. Now here's a quote. I like quotes. attributed to Menachem Begin, a former prime minister of Israel.
Hmm.
And it's especially pertinent today, where people are, excuse me, where people are equating the Israeli side with the Hamas side. Begin said, I would rather hear live Jews vilified than dead Jews eulogized. I agree with him 100%. Spare me your sympathies after we're dead. I'd rather see the Jews alive. There was another interesting quote by the Iranian ambassador, Israelis ambassador to the United States, and he said, Israel will not see itself bound by an agreement that does not fully address Iranian threats against its existence. In other words, if the United States plans to go back into an agreement with Iran, which apparently Biden plans on doing, Israel will not feel itself bound by that, and it will do whatever is necessary to safeguard its people.
Hmm.
One word that keeps coming up and that people keep asking me about, and I am reluctant to define it because I'm not always too sure, is postmodernism. Modernism means basically the Enlightenment values, being judged as an individual, an emphasis on freedom, an emphasis on liberty, an emphasis on democracy, an emphasis on individualism, which means being judged as an individual, not as a member of the group. Now, all of that is being under attack in the United States, especially on the university level. And because everyone sort of passes through the university level in the news media and in Hollywood as well. This is the idea of postmodern. Modernism is the Enlightenment. Postmodernism claims to be better, more humane, but it doesn't put as great an emphasis on liberty, on freedom, and on being judged as an individual. I'll keep trying to explain the postmodernism to you and me. Here's something. If you're wondering, should I contribute again to the United Nations? Well, here's something to keep in mind. The United Nations recently elected Iran to the UN Women's Committee. I don't think there's anything to say after that.
Interesting choice.
Yeah, maybe sick as well. One thing that has come up again, which requires endless definition, is wokeness. What the hell is wokeness? Well, it's an awareness, I guess, of everyone's civil rights and the rights to have civil rights, especially Black people. But it also contains a lot else, and that's not mentioned that often. Wokeness means that the ills of the world are a result of culture, not human nature, and the humanity set free from the contamination of Western civilization would prosper and become a kinder, more gentle world. There are those who, and especially in recent years, have believed that if only we adopted socialism, communism, thisism, thatism, we would all be better off and we would have a kind of paradise on earth. There are other people like me, stuck in the mud reactionaries, that's right, and we enjoy it down here. And we think that the problem is human nature. People seem to be born with a tendency to get angry, a tendency to act angry. If you ever had an accident, what was your first impulse? Did you want to get out of the car and go toward the other person and say hug? Or did you get angry and curse out some part of them, such as their race, their gender, their whatever? People seem to be born with a great capacity for hatred. My brother, who was a rather important psychologist, did a study on children's dreams. And let me tell you something, it's a good thing they're only dreams. When they get angry, they would wipe out everything from here to the horizon. You take a look at a child's eye when they are really angry. And their dreams include a lot of cutting and burning and harming. I see very little evidence in human history that were mainly good folks who wish well for everyone else. In recent centuries, people have come up with various ideas that will create this love relationship between people. As I mentioned, things like Marxism, socialism, and other isms. In wokeness, the portrait of America and American society is basically a portrait of a hierarchy. Everyone is either an oppressor or oppressed. That's it. There's no neutrals in this. There's no such thing as you're mildly bigoted or mildly racist, something like that. In the outcast, you are in the outcast. That's it. And that's what I suppose gives these people a great deal of confidence in that. I wanted to mention something about so-called Palestinian nationalism. First of all, there was no such thing as Palestinians as a distinct group of people until 1967. After Israel beat down the attack on Israel in 5 days and destroyed the entire air force of the anti-Israeli forces, people started to think, well, wait a minute, maybe the Palestinians, which weren't called Palestinians yet, are not going to win. Maybe the Arabs are not going to win. Now, at that time in the 60s, the best friend of the Arabs who wanted to destroy Israel was the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union may not have been good at producing enough wheat for everyone, but they were very, very excellent in the area of propaganda. And so right then they looked at the situation. They said, look, Israel is looked at the underdog as the David versus the Goliath of the hundreds of millions of Arabs and Muslims. Why don't we see if we can flip that script? Why don't we call the Arabs, which is what they were called then, Arabs, and make them into a group of people who have been thrown out of their own land. We'll call them Palestinians. The word Palestinian goes back a great deal in history. After the Romans beat the hell out of the Jews, they got really mad and they said, we're not even going to call them Jews. We're not going to call it Israel. We're going to call it Palestinia. Palestinia were a tribe that was prominent in that area in ancient times. And from time to time throughout history, Israel, what is now Israel, was called Palestine. But it did not refer to the Arab Muslims. Well, the Russians were successful and the Arabs were successful. And nowadays, everyone who is a terrorist, who is an Arab, has been transformed into a sad, poor Palestinian who would just like its land back. They never owned the land. Palestinians own perhaps 6% of the land that is now considered part of Israel. Every one of those people, Arabs who own land, still own it. Still own it. You can go to plenty of places in Israel, and this is owned by an Arab, that's owned by an Arab, that's owned by an Arab. And by the way, if they have a problem, the Supreme Court of Israel will back them up. It's one of the reasons why the Supreme Court of Israel isn't always popular with a lot of the Israeli people. But the Supreme Court of Israel has always said, look, he has a deed, he owns the land, get the hell out of here and leave him alone. That's it. It's a real nation. It's just like the United States. It is law abiding. We'll come back to that until I'm convinced you. One thing you do see about Palestinians, Arabs, is when they are weeping. often for good reason. Their child has died. Their child has been killed by a bomb dropped by an Israeli plane, and so on and so forth. The Israelis try extremely hard. I don't know any other military in the history of the world that tries harder to avoid civilian casualties. They even actually call up people in buildings they're going to bomb and say, all right, we're going to bomb it, get the hell out of there. And they're hoping the civilians leave and the soldiers stay. They also, as a warning, they'll drop a little bomb, almost like a large firecracker, on the roof of a building they're going to bomb, where often missiles are hidden in the basement. It's saying to the average person, get the hell out of here. You have a couple of minutes and then we're going to bomb it. I don't know anyone else that does it. I don't even think it's a smart idea. I'm for bombing away. But nonetheless, they go to this length. And it doesn't get them much credit in the world, but they do it nonetheless because they feel it's the right thing to do. They call it purity of arms. Okay. By the way, in World War II, the United States, which I consider a very good nation, used to drop 10,000-pound bombs on Germany. They were called blockbusters because they would literally flatten an entire block. And I would imagine a lot of civilians. Oh, and they didn't announce it either. On the other hand, the Arabs, after they killed someone like, either an Israeli, or if they killed someone amongst their own group that they feel is a traitor or belongs to the wrong splinter group, they will drag them along the streets of, wherever this has happened. Of course, you can't see this, but basically it shows.
Oh no. Oh, no. Oh, man. Yeah, wow.
Well, they do this frequently. It's not a once in a lifetime thing. They will tie the person up by their legs and then just drag them around the streets. And anyone who has a motorcycle is welcome to join in. And I have another little picture here, but I don't know if it can be seen. Yeah, this is this little picture right here.
Mm-hmm.
My finger is the big thing. The picture is the little thing over there.
Yeah, I see that.
Anyway, what it is they had some Israeli soldiers who wandered into the wrong part of Israel, where there were a lot of Arabs, and they literally ripped the person to pieces. And then they would feed pieces of the person, a pancreas, an arm, and a leg, out the window to the waiting Palestinian crowd below, who would hold it up in triumph. There's no purity of arms there in case you're looking for it. There's an article, actually it's an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal, who pointed out that only 2 of the 20 people that have been arrested for beating the hell out of the Asians in a really brutal manner. And they're usually hitting older Asians, frail Asians. It's just disgusting. Anyway, only 2 of those people were white. Now, Biden is taking a different approach than Trump took to the Middle East, and Israel is mighty worried. Basically, the Arabs have defined the groups that oppose Israel in a different manner, in a positive manner, and Trump has taken money away from these people. For example, the so-called refugees. The way refugees are defined at the UN is if you're an Arab refugee, and let's say you fled Israel in 1948, and it's now 2021. If you're related, you're the great-great-grandson, let's say, that original person, you're still considered a refugee and still get aid. They are the only group in the world that is defined in such a manner. They are also the only group that has their own refugee agency. Everyone else is lumped together, but the Muslim refugees are separate. And we would give a lot of money to them. We give money directly to the Palestinian Authority. We give money to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees. We're talking real money here, okay? Here's we give 235 million in U.S. aid to the Palestinian Authority. We give millions over the years to the Refugee Agency. Trump stopped that. He said you don't get rewarded for being a schmuck, and I don't know if he used that term. But anyway, they're giving the money to them. They're doing the same with Iran, except there we talk about not hundreds of millions, but billions. I don't know why that's necessary. By the way, I don't know if you remember a while back that we gave under Biden, in addition to billions and billions, we gave them, I don't know if it was $1 billion or what, of cash money, and it was in a tractor trailer. And it was just bulging in there. I didn't know we had enough dollar bills. Why do we give cash? Because they wanted cash. Why? Why would you want cash? Wouldn't you want just a check? Who uses cash? Terrorists use cash. Surprisingly, terrorists don't take a check. What can you do? They want cash money. When they hand out money to people, it's cash money. You can't say, here, we'll put it on your credit card. Because one of you is going to be dead before the end of the day. And, it's just better this way. It's easier to bribe people in dollars as well. And, well, that's what they started doing there, is giving these people money. Well, I'll tell you something. Kissinger once said that it is dangerous to be an enemy of the United States, but it might be, no, wait a minute. Kissinger said it's dangerous to be an enemy of the United States, but it's fatal to be a friend. Okay. Well, this really repeats that thing. Okay. If you want, you can take out my little mumbling there. If you like it, you can keep it. You often hear that women are not doing as well as men, or that they're being discriminated against, and sometimes that happens. But do you ever hear this? No. If you don't listen to me, you're not going to hear all this important information. You want to go through life ignorant? Okay. But if you want to learn and learn and learn, you'll tune into this. According to the U.S. Department of Education, more than 57% of college graduates are female. As we move up into master's degree, it's 59% female. Now, whenever men do better, it's always described as a question of discrimination and hatred of women. What about if women do better? Is that caused by discrimination? Apparently not. No one mentions it. There aren't many geniuses, as you may have guessed, in the social sciences. There just aren't. In history, political science, sociology, whatever. We just don't get a lot of geniuses. One of the people that I think is a genius is a guy named Thomas Sowell. Now, I don't know if you can see this guy. There he is.
Oh, yeah.
And just as you suspected, Chris, he's black. But the interesting thing about him is the conclusion he reaches. His main area are the causes of human differences. Why is Europe more developed than Africa? Why do Asians do better in tests? All this sort of thing. And he just issued a new book, actual revision, Discrimination and Disparities. What are the causes of human differences? And discrimination is definitely in there, but it's just one reason. Historical injustices and persecution were often used as explanation of group disadvantage. But if this is so, why are the Jews doing well off economically? And why are they so damn well educated? If discrimination if the discrimination against Jews had worked, they wouldn't have been in this situation. If discrimination and injustices were useful explanation of group disadvantages, Jews would not be doing that well, and they are doing well. They win their share and more of Nobel Prizes. They become professors. When you think of a really smart guy, you think of someone like maybe Albert Einstein, very smart. Don't know what he said, but I know that I'm like the little dog that runs along after the fire truck. I'm not sure what I'd do if I catch it, but I know it's important, and I definitely should keep running. Okay. Few groups have been hurt more, victimized more than Jews. I mean, if you can beat the record of 3,000 years, you call me direct. But yet they've accomplished a lot. What Thomas Sowell points out is Black people have been able to accomplish a great deal as well, but it's often not noticed. How many of you people out there, I know you're getting restless, but this is important. How many of you folks out there know that there was a high school in Washington, D.C. where Blacks regularly did better on standardized tests than whites? Do you know the name of it? Dunbar High School. By the way, the past president of NAACP went down there to complain about how Blacks aren't doing that well. He wasn't even aware of this. There are other schools as well. I'm going to read a list because I want to annoy you, and I want this to sink in. Frederick Douglass High School in Baltimore, Booker T. Washington in Atlanta, PS 91 in Brooklyn, McDonough at 30, McDougal 35 in New Orleans, and on and on and on. And they were not the children of privilege. They were the children of laborers, workers, maids, porters, and they were tough. They were tough. They made the students dress well. You would not curse and last long at that school. There'd be no pushing and shoving, no beating this person up, no getting someone pregnant. None of it. It was like the Marine Corps. And it worked. It worked fabulously well. And there are many people who would say it's working well now. All right. I don't want to end on a bitter note here. So I'd like to tell you about a few newscasts that really astonished me. Here's a call that was on CNN on a 911 call. A woman named Karen was cleaning her husband's rifle, Kyle, that was his name, and accidentally shot him. She then called 911 and she said, "It's my husband. I've accidentally shot him. I've killed him."
Oh,
and the
my
lady
God.
said, "Please calm down, ma'am. Can you please make sure he's actually dead?" There was silence, and then bang! Karen said, "Okay, I've done that. Now what?" All right.
Oh, no.
Now, what about this? This is a sign at a local bar in my town. Warning, bars need your help. We can only open at 1/3 of our capacity. Those who don't drink for 3 are kindly asked to leave their place to professionals. All right. So, this person is being asked. You're not married yet, are you, Chris?
No, not yet.
Okay, this is one of the signs you should look for. So this guy was being asked, "So when did you notice your life was dead?" And the guy says, "The lovemaking was the same, but then the dishes started to pile up." Chris, I've said all I have to say, and probably more than needs to be said. All right?